Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how to be a great mentor. My name is Jack Kavanaugh. I'm the Director of Training and Program Development for Mentor New York. Mentor New York is an agency that serves mentoring programs across New York State to help them better serve the mentees in their programs. Our mission is to increase both the quantity and quality of mentoring relationships across New York State. One of the ways we do that is through making sure that mentors like yourself are adequately trained and supported and prepared to enter into the mentoring relationship. We'll be spending a little bit of time today just talking about some basic skills and strategies for you to become the best mentor that you can be. So to start with, I always want to think about, why do we mentor? What is it that brings us here? And so to start with, I'm going to share a brief video. Now, I always like to start with that video because I think it's important to remember our own experiences with mentoring. Were we mentored? Were we not? What was the positive impact that a mentor had on our lives? And so really reflecting on the impact that mentoring has had on us, just like the video says, makes us more likely to want to be mentor ourselves. And so thinking about what support did we receive when we were younger, when we were a middle school student or high school student that led us to where we are today? And how do we make sure that we're providing the support that our mentees need from us to also have access to that type of support? And it might look different than what a 14-year-old needed when you were 14, but it's just as important that they receive it. So let's talk a bit about what makes a great mentor. A great mentor is someone who is trusting, a guide and an advisor, someone who's real, someone who offers wisdom and partnership, someone who's honest, is a friend, and is curious. A great mentor understands that the mentoring relationship is about being that guide and that advisor, and is not about being prescriptive or telling the mentees what they should or should not be doing. We want to make sure that our mentors are sharing wisdom of your life experience, but also understand that we're learning from our mentees' wisdom as well. And ultimately, we're an honest and curious partner on helping the mentee walk their life path. In contrast, a mentor should not be judged, right? We're not there to be judgmental. No one wants to spend time with someone who's judgmental. We're not there to be their therapist or their social worker. If they need connections to those types of professional supports, then we can help them get access to those, but we are not there to provide those supports. We're not their parent or their preacher or their savior. We're not there to tell them what they should be doing or how they should be living their life or save them from whatever it is that we think they need saving from. We're not their peer, and we're not Santa Claus or their ATM. Certain programs have specific policies around gifts or taking mentees out for food or whatever it is. So make sure you're talking to your program coordinator about what your specific policy says. Now we're going to talk through a little bit of mentoring skills. Now these are skills that you may already be familiar with or have used in part of mentoring relationships you've used in the past or other kinds of relationships. But I think one of the big shifts that I've seen from folks who come in and want to be a mentor to really make them great at it is to really think critically and strategically about what types of skills do I need to be leveraging here? How can I be as intentional and thoughtful as possible, and how I'm engaging? And so we're going to talk through a few very specific skills that hopefully will offer you a bit of guidance on how to do that. The first are just boundaries. I think sometimes it's easy to think of boundaries as just being about the parts of ourselves that we leave at home, that they're just the parts of ourselves that might not be appropriate to share, whether that's our personal life or anything like that, or our personal history. But it's also important to remember, what parts of ourselves do we have to bring to the table? If we're going to be an effective mentor, and understanding that that relationship is dual, is happening both ways, then that means we have to be prepared to share parts of ourselves and talk about ourselves and bring ourselves to the table. The trick is understanding where that balance is between appropriate sharing and inappropriate sharing. And so for me, one of the main ways to really think about it is what I'm saying or sharing in service of the mentee and in service of the relationship, or is it about me and something that I want to share or process? And making sure that anything we're sharing is about just that, sharing it with the mentee. A really good way to think about this is to think about it as, letting the mentee open the door and lead the conversation, and you're following and offering support based on where they are leading. So if you are talking about applying to colleges, for example, or applying for jobs, and they mention they're feeling a little bit of stress and anxiety about that process, then that's a great time for you to chime in with some experiences that you've had or other people that maybe you've seen, if you have children or siblings that have gone through something similar, as opposed to you're just talking about college applications or job interviews, and you start talking about your own history and personal stress and anxiety about it. That might not be what that mentee needs in that moment. Ultimately, you'll get better at this the more time you spend with them and get to know them. But it's just an important sort of litmus test, I think, to keep in mind, right? Am I serving my needs or am I serving theirs? And it's important to set these distinct boundaries because we really want to make sure that the relationship is as healthy and safe as possible. If you do have questions about this, this is what your program coordinator is there for, to offer you some support and guidance on navigating some of these relationships. In these relationships, mentors should not, again, focus primarily on their own personal needs, engage in any developmentally inappropriate behaviors, or display excessive physical contact with others, including mentees. We want to make sure that we're having some of that distance. Active listening again, something that a lot of you may already be doing or be familiar with, but it's a really great way to start to see how is the way that I am presenting myself, not even what I'm saying, but how I'm saying it and how I'm sitting, affecting the mentoring relationship. And so, again, even with body language, whether that's in person, making eye contact, or virtually being attentive, showing to your mentee that you are present, you are engaged, and you are there for them. So maintaining eye contact, having posture, sitting upright and looking at them can be really helpful. Mirroring back at them and kind of helping match their energy could also really help to navigate the relationship and build trust. Verbal cues. So not just the way that you're sort of presenting yourself in appearance, but also the way that you are speaking. So you can use things like reflection or summarization, and that's just repeating back things that your mentee is sharing with you. And this serves two purposes. One is to let them know that you're listening, that you heard them. The second is to really make sure that they understand what they're saying and give an opportunity to confirm or correct it. So they might be sharing a story about working with their teacher at school, and they're feeling really frustrated about something that happened. And you can say, it sounds a lot like you are really frustrated with your teacher at school because they're not really giving you the same respect that you feel like they give other students. And they might say, yeah, exactly. It's just really frustrating. Or they might say, no, that's not really it. It's some other thing. But it allows the conversation to move and allows them to kind of hear what they're coming across as saying. Clarification, again, just what it sounds like, asking those clarifying follow-up questions. When they're sharing something, you might say, you mentioned that the teacher said this thing to you. Can you explain a bit, like, what does that mean? Or what did you mean when you said this thing earlier? All of those types of follow-up questions, again, keeps the conversation moving, allows them to explore more of what they're thinking about or dealing with, and also allows you the opportunity to just learn more about them, right? We're asking more questions and getting more information. The last one on here is just remembering. It sounds a little silly to think of it as a skill, but I think it is. And it's really as simple as just remembering things that they've told you in the past, right? Their family members' names, what they do for a living, if they have part-time jobs, their friends' siblings' names, if they had big plans over the weekend, asking them later about it. All of these things, again, just show I'm listening, I'm here, I'm attentive. Now, I really want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about developmental relationships. Now, the developmental relationships is a framework that was developed by the Search Institute, which is a think tank based out of Minnesota, to really look at what is it that young people need from adults in order to get the most positive impact that they can get from their relationship. And so developmental relationships are close connections that powerfully and positively shape young people's identities and help them develop thriving mindsets. So I'm going to play a brief video, but they identified 5 specific pieces that are going to really help young people develop into their full selves through the relationships they have with caring adults. So let's watch this.
A young lady at a high school that would come to school every so often. She had F's because she was never there. And our mentor went up to the young girl once and asked her to have a competition. How many pop stars can you name in 30 seconds? And the next week she saw her in the hallway and she went up to her and she says, let's have the competition again. The next week, the young girl sought her out and said, let's have the competition. By the end of the year, she was coming to school every day. She was a straight A student. She was staying after school and mentoring others. Why? Because somebody took the time to develop a relationship. And it started simply by asking a question.
When kids experience what we and others are calling a developmental relationship, they're dramatically more likely to be motivated in school, to be optimistic about the future.
They build their own will to want to learn, and I believe that they feel connected to people. And as humans, I think inherently we all want to be connected to other people and something bigger than ourselves.
So when kids don't experience developmental relationships in their lives, we find very high correlations with much higher risk behavior, poor grades, worse outcomes.
They don't have as much motivation to work. They think any sort of criticism is an attack on themselves.
Our kids live in very chaotic situations and they need to be grounded. And in a relationship, they can be grounded.
We need to have that open communication where they feel comfortable to let us know what's going on.
So as we look at these kids who we know we need to reach and help succeed in school, and we're putting in place a lot of different strategies to do that, the thing they may need most is that relational connection with adults beyond their families.
When we talk about the importance of relationships, we see that as really being the essence and soul of the work that we do.
Relationships are so important in my teaching and the teaching that we do here at school because they just lay the foundation for anything that we do, especially with kids who struggle. If they're not finding that success, I can come down on them pretty hard because they know that I'm doing it out of a place of love, that I care about their success and their lives.
You can start expressing your ideas and your own opinion without thinking you're being judged.
There's sort of this idea that great relational teachers or youth workers are born and not made.
You can't build a relationship if you don't know what a good, healthy relationship is.
And what we believe we need to do if we really want to improve youth outcomes is actually create defined practices that people can begin to internalize and especially begin to use with all kids. Search Institute's new work on developmental relationships builds on 25 years of research that we did on developmental assets in kids' lives. Our new work is trying to go deep in that one thing that matters most, and that's those relationships through which kids become their best selves. Through 4 years of research, we've really boiled those relationships down into 5 key elements, and that's expressing care, challenging growth, providing support, sharing power, and expanding possibility.
The framework can just apply to anyone who works with young people. It's simple and concise. It's 5 things that we as teachers can do.
This whole year has felt so much more sensible and logical because I had that framework.
This is the basis of life, building relationship, being connected to something.
And so the longer term vision we have is really to activate that active ingredient of a developmental relationship in a school, in a family, in a youth program. And an active ingredient, we mean like yeast in bread. It's that thing you can't do without that brings the rest of it to life.
So like they shared in the video, there's 5 pieces. Expressing care, expanding possibilities, providing support, share power, and challenging growth. I think it's really important to think about this for 2 reasons in this way. One is, I think as mentors, sometimes we can get caught up in thinking about, I have to provide a tremendous amount of support or do so much for my mentee because they need so much. But what we can do is think about, by breaking it down like this, we can really say, today we can start to really focus on expanding possibilities because that's really what they need. Because the second thing that's really important about thinking of the mentoring relationship in these terms is that it allows us to think about us as the mentor as part of a web of support that our mentees are receiving support out from. So that could be family members, teachers and counselors at school, other folks in their community. And so they might not have someone at home who's really able to, share power and expand their possibilities, but they do have someone that's able to express care. And so we know that that is equipped in some way, right, from someone at home. And maybe they have someone at school who's really working on challenging their growth. And so what they really need from us is someone to provide a little support and expand their possibilities. And so we can really start to break down the relationships that we have with our mentees in this way. So let's dig into each one of these and think about what that might look like in each mentoring relationship. So the first one is expressing care. Adults that are dependable, spend time, listen, believe in them, that they're warm, showing that they enjoy spending time with them, and encourage them, praising them for their effort and accomplishments. I find for most mentors, this is the easiest one. This is why a lot of us mentor. This is why a lot of us get into it, because we want to be showing young people that they have someone in their life who cares about them. And it's just being consistent and showing up and being attentive. The next one is providing support. So adults that navigate, guiding them through hard situations and systems, adults that empower, building young people's confidence, and adults advocate on behalf of young people. And lastly, they set boundaries, putting in place limits that keep them on track. I think the best way to think about this is to think of it as we're their GPS unit, right? We're not setting the destination. We're not driving the car, but we're next to them providing that support on how to get to the destination. They're still the ones putting in where they want to go. They're the ones deciding if they're turning right or left. We're just telling them, hey, if you want to get to that goal, this is probably the best way to do it. And then they can say, you know what, I know you said to turn right here, but I'm going to go left. And we can say, that's cool. We're just going to recalculate a new route. And that's what the mentor does. Another way to think about this is, I don't know if you bowl or if you've been bowling, especially with kids, but sometimes they'll put up those bumpers on the side, right, to keep the ball from going into the gutters. And I think thinking of the mentor as those bumpers on the side of the bowling alley, right? We're not taking the ball, walking all the way down, for them and knocking over all the pins. We're just making sure that at the very least, they're not going to roll a gutter ball, right? That ball is going to get to the end of the bowling alley. We're just sort of raising the floor for if they do make mistakes, if issues do come up, that it's not going to be a gutter ball, right? It's not going to throw them completely off track, that we're keeping them supported enough to stay focused. The third one is challenging growth. Adults expect the best of young people. Adults stretch them, pushing them to go further. We hold them accountable and help them reflect on failures. I think this one's really important for mentors to focus in on because it's about helping them set goals and making sure that they understand that if they make a mistake or fail at one of their goals, it's not because of anything wrong with them. It just means maybe they need to rethink their strategy and try again or recalibrate what their goals are. And so as the mentor, we're helping them set goals that are both, they're pushing them to really, challenge themselves, but we're also helping them figure out how are they going to be able to achieve those goals and what are they going to do when they fail, right? We want to make sure we're helping them understand that failures are just ways to learn what didn't work so that the way the next time we do it, we'll know what we need to do differently. And it's a really important tool for us to help with mentees to really, make sense of the paths that they're taking to achieve goals that they want to hit. Again, that GPS unit, right? They're setting those goals. We're just helping them figure out how to get there. And that when they make a mistake, it doesn't mean, stop the car and we're getting out. It just means, okay, let's find a new way. What do we learn from that? Share power. Adults respect young people, taking them seriously, treating them fairly. Adults include young people, involving them in the decisions that affect them. Adults collaborate with young people, working with them to solve problems and reach goals. And adults let young people lead. I find that for many adults who are working with young people, this can be difficult because we're really trained as adults to be in control of the situation, to manage everything, to understand, what it is that needs to happen. But in the mentoring relationship, sometimes it's important to take that step back and let the young person take control. And that can be as simple as, what card game are we going to play today, all the way up to, having young people on the board of directors of the mentoring organization, right? And anything in between. Another way to think about this is, again, thinking collaboratively, right? So if they're coming to you with issues, that we're letting them figure things out on their own and kind of facilitating their decision-making process rather than, offering advice all the time. Or if there are situations where we have to be prescriptive and directive, or we have to say, okay, we're going to do this, we have to be here at this time, we have to, whatever it is, that we're sort of pulling back the veil to at least let them understand why we're talking that way or why we're engaging that way. And so as for young people, we're talking to them, let's say, we have to focus on a specific activity today because, I had a call with their parent who shared that something that's specific they're struggling with, right? And then we can say, listen, I really want to hold you accountable to this because I talked to your mom and, mom said that, you were really struggling with this. And we talked about this as a goal for you. And I think it's really important that we do this today. And we're not just telling them what to do for the sake of telling them to do it, but we're sharing with them the whole thought process we have around why it's important to move in that direction, or why we need to do it this way. And then lastly is expand possibilities. Adults inspire young people to see possibilities. Adults broaden horizons, exposing them to new ideas, experiences, and places. And adults connect young people to others who can help them develop and thrive. This can be both accessing to people that we know. Let's say they decide they want to go into school to be an accountant, or they want to be a carpenter, and we know someone who's done that career or has been on that path, and we can make that connection. Things like that are really helpful, because one of the main ways that we see benefits to young people from mentoring is through accessing our social capital, our networks, through the relationship, right? They now have access to everything that we know and everyone that we know. It can also be experiences like going to museums or parks, or seeing movies, or whatever it is that they might not have done on their own. And these can be really helpful, because sometimes it's not about showing them exactly what you think they're going to like, but it's just about modeling the experience of seeing new things, engaging in new topics, spending time with new spaces. And even if they leave and say, that was interesting, but it's just not for me, like, that's okay, that's cool. They're still exposing themselves to new things. And same with people, they might not really know, like, hey, I know this is a career path I want to go down, but we can still connect them to people that we know and resources that we have, in order for them to really suss out what is it that, they like or don't like, or want to do or don't want to do. And so the more experiences they have engaging with folks from different backgrounds or different communities or different types of topics, the more self-awareness they're going to be able to develop with coaching from their mentor around what interests they have and what sort of paths they might see for themselves. So this is a really valuable tool that I hope you'll take from this and maybe spend some time thinking about. But so for each one of those things, right, expressing care, providing support, challenging growth, sharing power, and expanding possibilities, what are things that you can say or do, or other ways that it can happen in the mentoring relationship? So what are things you can say that express care? What are things that you can do to express care? For example, something that you can say would be, I see you, like, I notice you, I know that you did this thing, and you give them shout outs and appreciation when they accomplish things, or have been working on and setting a goal and they hit that goal. Being able to really recognize, like, hey, I saw that you did that thing, like, that was awesome, like, I see you, and that can be really powerful. Things that you can do is as simple as just showing up consistently on time for when you're supposed to get together and meet. If you guys get together every Saturday at 2, for example, show up consistently. That's one of the ways that we know people care about us. They show up consistently. And so take some time and think about, what are things that I can say or do, or other ways that I can make this happen for each one of these. And it can be really helpful for your mentoring relationship. The last thing I'll share about this is it's important to think about how they start to build on each other. In many ways, we can't really do just one, right? If we're challenging growth, we're probably also expanding their possibilities and helping them grow in a way they didn't see, and expressing care and providing support kind of all at the same time. And so, there's sort of a ecosystem in the relationship of all of these things happening at the same time. But thinking about, what do I want to focus on today, and how does it feed into this framework, is just a really good way to center the work of your relationship, so you can spend time together in a way that's focused and is going to have a really lasting impact. The last piece is they start to build on each other. So at the beginning of the relationship, you might want to really focus on expressing care and even sharing power, like letting them have decision-making process. As the mentoring relationship starts to build and you have a good rapport and you get to know them better, that's when you can really get in there and start providing a little more support and structure to them, holding them more accountable to things, challenging growth, helping them set goals and saying, you keep saying that you want to do better in math, but I don't see you changing your study habits. What's that about? Let's think of a plan to help you move forward. Or expand possibilities, right? We're going to start building them up and taking them out into the world and showing them new things. And so the relationship starts to build on top of itself, right? We're setting that framework at the beginning with just expressing care, sharing power, letting them take control. They might push back a little bit to see if we're someone who's really going to stick around and build this relationship with them long term. And then once you kind of break through that challenging phase, that's when you can really dig deep and do some of this other work around challenging growth and expanding possibilities. And so that's why I think this is a really useful framework. It allows us to take the time that we have with our mentee, which can be limited, and really make sure that we're making the most of it. So let's watch one final video about this.
Pretty much everybody who works with kids or interacts with them knows that relationships matter incredibly for how they develop, they perform in school, where they end up in the future. But that doesn't mean you know how to build a great relationship with a young person who you work with or that you just care about. At Search Institute, we are 4 years into a major project of research to try and open that black box of transformative relationships in kids' lives and really figure out what happens in relationships that help kids be and become their best selves. What we've discovered is that there are 5 critical elements of a developmental relationship. The first of those elements is kind of obvious. It's expressing care. And the key idea there is letting kids know that they matter to you.
Be dependable. Listen. Believe in me. Be warm. Encourage.
The second element of a developmental relationship is challenging growth. And that means pushing kids to continually get better, no matter how well they're already doing.
Expect my best. Stretch. Perfecto feeling. Hold me accountable.
The third element is providing support, and that means helping kids complete tasks and achieve their goals.
Navigate. Empower. Advocate. Set boundaries.
The fourth element is sharing power, and that's about treating kids with respect and giving them a say.
Respect me.
Include me.
Collaborate. Let me lead.
And the fifth element is expanding possibilities, which means connecting kids with people and places that broaden their worlds.
Broaden horizons. Inspire. Connect.
We know from our studies that when kids experience relationships that are characterized by these 5 elements, they're much more likely to possess key social emotional skills like motivation and a sense of belonging, empathy, and much less likely to engage in risk behaviors. Whether you're working with kids in your job or raising them at home or just interacting with them in your community, we know that if you express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, and expand possibility, you'll be doing tremendous things to help those kids be and become their best selves. If you'd like to know more about developmental relationships, click the links in the description below and subscribe to our YouTube channel for.
I highly recommend researching more about this. They have a lot of really great resources about developmental relationships on their website. So I highly recommend spending some time and looking into that. So I wanted to thank you for your time today. If you do have any follow-up questions or concerns, you can find us at mentornewyork.org. There is a contact a page on there that you can use to reach out to us. My email is jkavanagh, Kavanagh, at mentorkids.org if you want to reach out to me directly. Otherwise, I really appreciate your time. You will get a brief quiz following this just to make sure that you were here and present and listened to everything we had to say. But again, I can't thank you enough. You're making one of the really powerful decisions that anyone can make to impact the life of a young person. And so I hope this was useful for you. And again, thank you for your time.